If you listen to a Hindustani classical music performance for the first time, you might find yourself waiting for something that never quite arrives. A melody settling in, a piece that clearly begins and ends. Instead, the music seems to circle, unfold, and return, less like a composition being performed and more like a process taking shape in real time. That difference is not accidental. Hindustani classical music is not organized around finished works in the same way many Western traditions are. What persists is not a fixed piece, but a set of conditions that make musical emergence possible. Hindustani classical music took shape within this approach in North India, developing through centuries of court culture, historical exchange, and later global circulation. Rather than centering individual compositions, it establishes structured conditions in which music can emerge, transform, and remain coherent across generations. Around the 12th century, Indian classical music had diverged into two major traditions: Carnatic music in the south and Hindustani music in the north. This separation was influenced by various factors, including regional, cultural, and religious differences. The northern regions, exposed to Persian and Mughal influences, saw their music evolve into the Hindustani style. These influences introduced new instruments, performance contexts, and aesthetic values. Southern India, on the other hand, was less affected by these political shifts, so it preserved a more continuous connection to earlier Sanskritic and devotional practices, giving rise to the Carnatic system. Despite stylistic differences, both traditions share core concepts: raga, tala, and a strong reliance on oral transmission. The Mughal Empire, which lasted from about 1526 to 1857, was renowned for its rich cultural heritage, particularly in architecture, literature, and music. Rulers actively supported musicians, sustained long term performance traditions, and facilitated the synthesis of Persian and Indian musical practices. One of the central vocal forms to emerge in this period was Drupad. Drupad is the oldest surviving genre of Hindustani classical music. It is characterized by slow, on-meter melodic development, austere ornamentation, and an emphasis on tonal precision and meditative depth. The opening section, the Alap, unfolds without rhythmic accompaniments, allowing the raga to be gradually revealed. A key historical figure in this context is Tansen, a figure that is often likened to that one of Johann Sebastian Bach in the West. He was a musician in the court of Emperor Akbar. He contributed to the refinement of the Drupad, codified raga forms that remain foundational today, and helped synthesize indigenous Indian elements with Persian musical influences. He also contributed to the development of instruments like the rabab and the rudravina, enriching the sonic textures of North Indian classical music. Through pedagogy and repertoire, his lineage shaped Hindustani music for centuries. At the core of Hindustani classical music lies the raga. The word raga derives from the Sanskrit root meaning to color or to infuse. In traditional discourse, it is often described as that which colors the mind, a way of emphasizing its affected role rather than its melodic content alone. The raga is not simply a scale or musical key. It is a melodic framework designed to shape emotional and psychological response. Each raga is defined by a specific selection of notes called the swaras, distinct ascending and descending patterns, characteristic melodic phrases, and rules governing emphasis, ornamentation, and motion. These elements guide a musician's improvisation, ensuring that even within the vast freedom of Hindustani classical music, each raga maintains its unique identity. The swaras are analogous to solfege syllables in Western music, but they are not fixed to absolute pitches. Instead, they are relative to a chosen tonic, which can shift depending on the performer's range.
I would say Indian classical music is totally based on vocal music, whether it be a melodic instrument, whether it be the voice, or whether it be the tabla, a percussion instrument. So,
Unlike Western equal temperament, which divides the octave into 12 equal semitones, Hindustani music recognizes a finer pitch continuum traditionally described as 22 microtonal divisions, known as shruti.
Ni da pa ma ga re sa. Sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. Sa ni da pa ma ga re sa.
These microtones are not used as fixed steps, but as expressive inflections that shape how swaras are approached, sustained, or departed from. Microtonality plays a crucial expressive role. A note may be slightly flattened or sharpened, and the precise intonation can dramatically alter the emotional character of a raga. Meaning emerges not only from which notes are played, but from how they are approached in time.
Pa pa da da ni 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 sa ni za da za pa za 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 ga za re za sa sa sa.
Hindustani classical music is transmitted primarily through a traditional lineage system in which a guru or master teaches a shishya or disciple through sustained one on one apprenticeship. Rather than standardized instruction, knowledge is passed on through long term embodied practice. The student lives or studies closely with the guru, absorbing musical knowledge through repetition, imitation, and sustained listening. Music notation plays a secondary role. Mastery is embodied rather than textual. The aim is not merely technical proficiency, but internalization of raga grammar, tonal nuance, and temporal development. Although oral transmission is central, Hindustani music does employ notation systems as pedagogical aids. The most widely used is the Bhatkanda system, developed in the early 20th century by Vishnu Narayan Bhatkanda. This system uses sargam to represent pitch relationships. Unlike Western staff notation, sargam notation is relative, not absolute. Rhythm is indicated separately through cyclical structures rather than linear bar lines. Notation functions as a guide rather than a prescriptive score, preserving space for interpretation and improvisation.
So can you show me a tal?
Yes, but before that, I just want to show you what makes the tal,
Okay.
the syllables of tabla. If I say na, if I say tun, if I say te te, ke, then both hand dha, dhati dha gena dha, gena dhati dha gena dha, dhati dha gena dha, gen dha. So it's kind of the way you to talk, you.
¿Cómo conociste a Ravi Shankar? Lo conocí en Japón. Yo toqué un día antes que él en un teatro, no me acuerdo cómo se llama, en Tokio. Y al otro día fui a ver su concierto. Por cierto que me entusiasmó, ¿no? Porque es un músico increíble.
By the 20th century, Hindustani classical music began circulating beyond India through recordings, radio broadcasts, and international concert tours. This shift coincided with the decline of royal and aristocratic patronage and the emergence of a public concert culture, in which classical music was increasingly performed for heterogeneous, often unfamiliar audiences. As a result, musicians were confronted with a new problem: how to transmit a highly contextual, orally grounded tradition within modern, globalized performance settings. A central figure in this transition was Ravi Shankar, whose training followed the Guru Shishya tradition, but whose professional life unfolded almost entirely within a modern, international framework. His importance lies not in altering the internal structure of Hindustani classic music, but in mediating between systems without diluting one into the other. Shankar insisted on presenting raga based music according to its own formal logic: extended duration, disciplined improvisation, and structural restraints, even when performing for Western audiences accustomed to shorter forms and harmonic progression. Shankar played a crucial role in reframing Indian classical music as a concert tradition intelligible outside its original cultural context, without translating it into Western musical terms. He resisted the reduction of Indian music to exoticism or spectacle, emphasizing instead its rigor, complexity, and internal discipline. In doing so, he helped establish the sitar and Hindustani music as serious art forms on the global stage, rather than curiosities or popular novelties. His legacy is therefore institutional and pedagogical as much as musical. Through recordings, lectures, collaborations, and the training of students, Shankar contributed to the creation of a stable international audience capable of sustained listening and structural appreciation. He also set a precedent for how non Western traditions could circulate globally without surrendering their grammatical foundations. Later generations of Indian musicians inherited not only access to global platforms, but a model for preserving structural integrity under modern conditions. 1960s marked a moment of structural encounter between Hindustani classical music and Western musical practice. Musicians, particularly in jazz and rock, were drawn to features that diverge sharply from Western functional harmony, modal organization rather than harmonic progression, extended improvisation, microtonal inflection, music understood as a vehicle for altered perception and transcendence. John Coltrane was deeply influenced by Indian classical music. He found a striking parallel between Indian classical music and the modal jazz that he was pioneering. Both systems privileged stable modal frameworks over goal directed harmonic progression. In contrast to Western functional harmony, where chords generate tension and resolution through movement toward tonal centers, Indian classical music organizes musical time around the sustained exploration of a single raga. Meaning emerges through gradual variation, intensification, and register rather than through harmonic arrival points. This structural affinity helps explain why Indian classical music resonated more deeply with modal jazz than with most popular Western forms. In Coltrane's later works, such as A Love Supreme and Om, extended improvisation unfolds within limited pitch material, emphasizing duration, repetition, and accumulation rather than chordal change. While these works do not reproduce raga structures, they reflect a shared logic, improvisation as sustained inquiry within constraints. The broader Western reception of Indian music in the 1960s often misunderstood this logic. In much of the 1960s rock, elements of Indian music were abstracted at the surface level, most notably the sitar's timbre or the drone, without engaging in the underlying modal discipline or temporal structure. Indian music was frequently treated as a textural or exotic effect rather than as a fully articulated musical system. Modal jazz, by contrast, encountered Indian classical music at the level of structure rather than sound, making the dialogue more durable and conceptually grounded. Coltrane's respect for Ravi Shankar reflects this distinction. His engagement signals not stylistic fusion, but recognition of a parallel musical philosophy, one that prioritizes internal coherence over harmonic teleology. In this sense, the encounter between Indian classical music and modal jazz represents a rare moment of genuine convergence between East and West rather than a superficial borrowing. Fun fact, John Coltrane had so much love and respect for Ravi Shankar, he even named his own son Ravi. So, in conclusion, Hindustani classical music is not a museum of preserved works, it is a living system of practice. Its frameworks do not preserve pieces, they preserve conditions. Change is not a threat to continuity, it is the means by which continuity is maintained. What persists across centuries and contexts is not repertoire, but a system designed to generate meaning.